It was my mother who detected the rare childhood eye cancer called retinoblastoma in a photograph that she took of me when I was about 3 months old. So with that photo, she took it to more than one doctor to get an official diagnosis, because the first doctor was like, "Oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it." And the second doctor was like, "Yes, this is serious and you need surgery now." So I officially had my right eye surgically removed when I was 9 months old.
You're listening to the Her Money Story podcast with your host, Felicia Gopaul. Every woman has a story that explains her relationship to money and finances, and a woman's story about money shapes her actions, both positive and not, for years to come. This podcast is for any woman learning how to take care of her money so that her money can take care of her now and into the future.
Hi, this is your host, Felicia Gopaul, and you're listening to the Her Money Story podcast. Every woman has a story that explains her relationship to money and finances. And a woman's story shapes her actions, both positive or not, for years to come. This podcast is about learning that you are not alone, and it's about building the mindset, discovering resources, and taking the actions to weather any storm that life can throw at you. Now, I am so excited to have today's guest. When I wrote my ebook originally, the name of the book was Preparing for the 5 Ds: Divorce, Disability, Downsizing, Disasters, and Death. And today's guest has something to say about all 5. Her name is Zaakirah Muhammad, cancer survivor, world traveler, and author of Seeing Life Through a Different Lens, a survivor's memoir on overcoming adversity with resilience. She's the podcast host of Cultivating Strategies, a professional photographer, and a digital marketer. So she's got a lot going on. In her role as a digital marketer, she helps small business make sure that their media pages look good and advises them on the best tactics for growing and being consistent with their brand in social media. Zaakirah, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let's kind of dive in. As I said, you have, when you responded to my post, one of the things that you said is you have experienced many of the circumstances that I have observed over time that women have kind of gone through that affects their finances. But the first thing that affected you was your when you were very young, you were diagnosed and had your eye removed because you were suffering from cancer. Tell me a little bit about that story.
So it was my mother who detected the rare childhood eye cancer called retinoblastoma in a photograph that she took of me when I was about 3 months old. So with that photo, she took it to more than one doctor to get an official diagnosis, because the first doctor was like, "Oh, it's nothing, don't worry about it." And the second doctor was like, "Yes, this is serious and you need surgery now." So I officially had my right eye surgically removed when I was 9 months old. And then after that, it was just been a matter of just living with the official disability of having no vision in my right eye. And then later on, due to the effects of radiation, I ended up developing a mild hearing loss. So throughout life, of course, having all these medical expenses, having all these medical bills, definitely shaped my money language and my interpretation for money. So thank goodness my parents were pretty transparent with me, so they would let me know, especially as I got older. I would say I easily remember age 7. By the time I'm able to ask for X, Y, Z, then my own parents would say, no, we can't do that because we have to pay X, Y, Z bills. We have to do this, we have to do that. Or, of course, then if there was enough time or enough money left over, then she would say, okay, we have this amount of money left. What do you want to spend it on? So I do remember just having an open conversation about money. Like I would know when we had it and when we didn't. So it wasn't much of a secret. And I feel like that kind of helped to shape my understanding of money as I got older. So when I was older, my mom informed me that she did file a medical lawsuit against the first pediatric doctor that said there's nothing wrong with the eye. And so, of course, that became a whole nother definitional conversation of money because my mom then had to explain to me that she chose a guardianship to be able to invest, the money into that, and that it would be invested over a period of years, and that once I'm a certain age, then I'll be able to actually have access to that money. So it was a very interesting time when it came to learning money, because also by the time I was, a teenager, I would say, it would be, my mom would then have these conversations with me about, okay, so we have to budget for XYZ at the grocery store for the week. So you cannot go over $20 or $40 or $50, whatever the amount is. And so, of course, at a young age, she then helped me to, understand how to budget. So I feel like I had maybe it was a love-hate relationship with money, because for a while I wanted everything, right? I wanted everything. But then there was the understanding of, no, you can't have everything because money only stretches so far.
Got it. So so it sounds like your circumstance is very different from the way that a lot of kids are raised, and that your parents were pretty transparent about you have money, you don't have money. I remember because what I have found is a lot of parents don't talk to their kids about money, whether they have it or they don't have it, other than oftentimes when they don't have it, it's just a no. It's just like, or they say things like money doesn't grow on trees, but they don't necessarily open up their checkbook and let their kids see, this is mommy paying my bills. And so at the end of the day, I only have X left over. I think that that's a very unusual conversation that your mother had with you. And then the fact that you were also the recipient of lawsuit proceeds, so that you have perhaps a larger sum of money to play with than most kids do. That's kind of a very unusual circumstance in and of itself as well.
Absolutely. And I definitely, especially as I get older, I definitely reflect, and I'm definitely grateful for those actual conversations, because I saw that in my own peers in school of even being able to have allowances, and most kids my age did not have allowances, and just, having a simple understanding of money and of its purpose and how it helps and how it can also hurt. And then also, maybe it is in relation, maybe I'm still just kind of discovering it, but also by the time I was in high school, it kind of maybe makes sense now as to, one, because I do have a disability, and as I was in high school, I then learned about becoming or having disability income to survive. But as a result, because all my peers were getting jobs just, to pay for their own expenses and their own needs in high school, I too wanted a job. I just wanted, I wanted a job like everyone else. I wanted to help my parents pay the bills. But then my own mom's like, no, you should focus on your education. And so then, of course, after high school, the funds were then used, just like she said when I was, preteen. She said that the funds would then be used for later purpose, and it ended up being used to fund my education. So even though I also ended up taking a not so typical route with education, I left the state of Florida. This is all happening pretty much in the state of Florida. I was born in Florida, and that's where we've always kind of traveled back to Florida just to be near the doctor that, I guess you say, saved my life.
Okay.
So there was a point where we lived in Tennessee, but we always just kind of circled back to Florida. So by the time I graduated high school, I wanted a change of scenery. I traveled to Washington, D.C. because of my background as a photographer. I traveled to Washington, D.C. for a National Geographic workshop. And while I was there, I ended up attending an open house for a art school. Boston University had a Center for Digital Imaging Arts in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. at that time, in the early 2010s. And I decided I wanted to go to that school. Now, technically, it was a trade school. It wasn't a 4-year, not even a 2-year university. It ended up being like a 1-year certificate program. So then that was my real first introduction of taking all the lessons that I've learned from what my mom and my dad had taught me growing up, and then literally utilizing it to budget for myself. So, of course, by this time, I was 18 years old with a CPA and a professional financial advisor, to make sure that I don't blow my money like a lot of kids who would have received any lump sum of money at year 18 and just blow it on anything. So that was just a different outtake, too, of already having financial advisors at such a young age.
Yeah, that is a very unusual path that you have gone. I mean, I talk to people who are in their 50s who don't have a financial advisor. So the fact that you had one at 18 is something that is really rather remarkable about your story. How have you, as a financial advisor, let me ask you, so how did you select the person that you selected? How did you, how has that relationship been? So, so talk about those two things, please.
Well, I would say that was initially my mom's decision, and my mom has always just pretty much followed her intuition and that visceral feeling inside of her. So when we randomly, for me, I remember I was just tired. It was a school day, and I'm like, well, what are we doing here? But one day we went to a YMCA, and we went to a free financial workshop. And the person who was teaching the workshop was a financial advisor. And so my mom was just asking all kinds of questions. And little did I know that she was really ended up liking this financial advisor. And so I think I remember as I got older, I kind of asked her why she chose them. It was like a small business and a 2-person business. And it was also Black owned. And she was like, I kind of want to intentionally choose someone that looks like you, because then they'll have more understanding for your situation, and they'll also, really actually advise you and not steer you left or steer you right, steer you the wrong way. So the relationship became interesting, and I appreciated, the fact that they did respect the situation as it was, and just kind of also respected me because I was coming into my own. So, of course, they made their suggestions, and I would follow or not follow. And it was really just a great understanding and appreciation of financial advisors at a young age, especially when it came to learning about taxes. And unfortunately, that is something we do not learn during our school days. So we, get to learn about taxes and just have a better, I would say maybe even a better appreciation about money, because they are the ones who really helped me to ideally, they had this great, big, financial assessment or questionnaire rather, to help you really fully budget every aspect of your life. And I remember, every year kind of using that to kind of help to see how can I provide for myself while I am living in the Washington, D.C. area, because of course I'm still a student, so I should ideally be operating on a student budget, and just kind of using those skills while I was still in the Washington, D.C. area for those 2 years as I first finished school and then kind of learned hands-on experience through internship, and then when those internships became jobs, that's when I would have to reevaluate my budget. So they've been very helpful.
Excellent. So are you still in the Washington, D.C. area, or are you someplace else now?
No, I am someplace else now. So I guess to continue on that story, after I probably, this was 2012 to 2014. So by 2014, well, at the end of 2013, I was reevaluating my budget. I was seeing how much I was spending and how it was time to really buckle down and save. So by this time, both of my parents were retired, and they decided to retire in Tennessee. And
Okay.
so I decided to then move in with my parents and lived in Tennessee for a few years. But this was right before also because I knew that I was saving a little bit of money. It was right before I also ended up getting to travel. So throughout the time, um, throughout high school is when it first started. The same thing with these funds that had been sitting in investments was also allowed me my first opportunities out of the country, which was another blessing because not many high school students would say that they can actually travel to, I guess I would say I've been to like 3, 4 countries, but by the time I graduated high school. And so by the time I moved back home into my parents, of course, I realized I had a little bit of savings. So that allowed me to um, do what I consider my first solo trip. And this was ironically the time that I also ended up meeting my husband.
Okay.
So we met through mutual friends, and this mutual friend was that I met, at least my side of the story is I met her through this organization called Operation Crossroads Africa, and that was where when I just graduated, before I moved to DC, and right after I graduated high school, I went to Ghana when she went to the Gambia. So the organization is like the Peace Corps before the Peace Corps. So you stay in a certain rural area for 2 months in the summer to really fully immerse yourself in that culture. So we kept in touch after we both came back from our respective trips. And she bragged about Gambia so much that I was like, okay, you know what, one day I will go. I want to go. And little did I know that 2014 would be the year that I would go. But also little did I know that she ended up marrying a local, a Gambian. And it was her husband's family and friends who really took me in and became my homestay family when I decided to go to the Gambia. And so little did I know that I ended up meeting my future husband. So then the trip ended up not only just being um, chance for me to expand on traveling to a new country, but expand on my travel photography skills. But also it ended up being a whole nother introduction to finances because then I would end up getting married. So the good thing about eloping overseas is that I did not have a $10,000, $15,000 wedding. But it was still different because the Gambia is a poor country, a third world country, and there's a completely different money mindset that I ended up marrying into. So it became a different understanding of how to budget for, because every travel that I've taken, of course, I've had to learn how to budget to take care of myself and make sure I can pay all the fees because every trip before the Gambia was with a group. So, of course, there's a set number of fees for applications and insurances and the whole bit. So by the time I'm in the Gambia, I am learning how to, budget and save and also learn, I would say, different, I guess, just money languages because when you grow up with a poor mentality, it kind of stays with you. So
Yes.
you never want to run out of money, right?
Right.
So it just became an interesting situation of, yes, because it is a third world country, there were a few things that I had to help with financially when it came to just getting married, and I was okay with that. So I mean, it's much better, even though it probably was maybe $1,000 wedding. It was much better than a $10,000 wedding. So
Got it.
then,
So hold on
those.
just 1 second before you go on. So
Mhm.
so you got married. Am I correct in that you got married to a man from Gambia?
Yes.
Okay, so you got married to a man from Gambia. You have your Western world way of running your finances, and then he's got his Gambian way of running his finances. How were they similar and how were they different?
So I think a lot of them were different, but also very similar because I could relate to, um, not the emotional attachment, I guess, of not wanting to run out of money,
Okay.
and in that aspect. But it was also very different because I think because maybe I would say that because his country is just poor in resources, that maybe there was also a way it was very different because there's the mentality of also wanting to hold on to money a lot tighter, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yes.
I grew up knowing about investments, so the more you invest, the more money will come back to you.
Yes.
So that kind of became conflicting, of course, and throughout our marriage. So, of course, understandably, once he was over here, because it took another financial, I guess this was actually the biggest financial hit of once I did get married, just going through the financial aspect of the immigration process, because everybody talked about, not many people talk about the financial or the emotional aspect of the immigration process, because that's, it's a lot of money just to bring your loved ones over here from a different country, any country, no matter what the relationship is. And so then I would say it became different and interesting because once he is over here, then there's the cultural aspect of wanting to provide for family, right? There's no matter where you go, never forget your family, and that's something that he kind of grew up with, and that became interesting because, of course, now we're merging finances. We're married. We're trying to start our life. We do have financial goals such as luxury cars and big houses and things of that sort. But then there's the voice inside of his head that says, don't forget about your family back home, right? Because now you're in a situation where you can help your family. And now it's just, okay, you save, but it's also a matter of prioritizing. It just became a matter of just prioritizing too. Like, okay, so you can save to take care of your family back home and make sure that your family right here in front of you is okay too. And then what's left over, how do you save after that?
So
So yeah,
was
it
there a
just became a
little bit of
different.
I'm sorry, was there was a push pull, if you will. So there's the family that represents you, and then there's the family back home, which is also which he's also got a commitment to. And so is there a conflict there, or is there or are you, or maybe at first you were trying to do both?
Yeah, I would say it can be a conflict because in my mind, you can't please everyone because there can be a conflict because that's just, imagine it as like a big piece of pie being sliced unevenly. So that's the way that I see it. Of like it's like one big financial pie being sliced unevenly. So of course it can easily become a conflict. And just like any other marriage that ends up having financial difficulties, it's just the same, similar in that manner. Just when you grow up with different financial understanding, it can easily become a conflict in marriages because you want the best for your family, but how do you prioritize? Because sometimes all you know from what you grew up with is what stays with you. And again, this is a third world country, and if you've never had your hands on $50,000, like how do you know what to really do with it? If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, one of the things that I often will talk to my clients and prospects about is the fact that, you know, it's related to what you were just talking about, which is kind of your perspective or the world as you see it based on what you've grown up with. And so we have these ideas, beliefs, feelings, emotions that are really tied and invested to the person, to our family and our family structure that we grew up in. And it can be, and there's a little bit of this is the way that it is. and we don't often take the time to look at, does this serve me, or is there a new way to think about this than the way that I kind of grew up in it? So if you only grew up thinking that, everything is shared amongst your family, and then you get into a new family and they don't have that same perspective, I could see that would bring some conflict if you're thinking that everything should be shared and this other person did not grow up in that mindset. So what we were talking about is we were just talking about kind of what you were learning from your marriage. So when I was listening to some of your former podcasts, you were talking about the fact that you had gotten married, and then you were talking about your 5-year anniversary. And so now it's past your 5-year anniversary and something has happened because you are now divorced. Conflicts, if you will, between how you were raised and how he was raised about money contribute to that, to the divorce, or was it and I don't want you to necessarily get into details that you're not comfortable with, but I'm fascinated by the idea that the way that you were raised was different from the way that he was raised, and how and how you were navigating that, given that your parents had always talked about monies and budgets and allowances from a very young age, and I'm imagining he did not have those conversations as he was growing up because he grew up in a third world country.
Absolutely. So I will say that was definitely one piece of the pie as far as why our marriage did not work out. But there's also the biggest thing also is cultural differences. So sure, the different money conversations is cultural, but also there's plenty of other cultural differences that can, I would say, make or break a marriage. And But then there's also communication, because not only just communicating about money, but communicating about goals and intentions. So there are a lot of different things that can, lead to a divorce, especially if you're ended up getting to the point of just trying to make it work, rather than knowing what works and what doesn't and sticking with it. So there's a lot of different things that I would say fell into what really caused us to, I guess, go separate ways. With the way a family friend said with that, it's really just two good people who just could not make it work. So, I mean, the intentions are pure, but there's just so much tension and so many differences that it just kind of separates apart. So I do think that the fact that there were a lot of things that I would say I grew up more in a more open, honest, transparent household, and on his end there was just, it's a cultural norm of this a lot of secrets. So it can be a conflict if one person is more open than the other, when it comes to just trying to make things work and stick to, the goals that, we did have.
And, and for whatever reason, money is a secretive, many families, money is a secretive topic. Parents don't talk about how much they really make. They don't talk about how much they're really spending on budgets. On the budget, they're not talking about that. And I remember as we were getting our oldest ready to go off to college, we had to have a conversation with her about, you're applying to these colleges, but unless they give us, lots and lots of financial aid, you may not be able to give them those colleges. And we've been, because I'm in personal finance, I probably talk about money more than most families, but I know that that's probably the exception rather than the norm. But my kids have grown up in pretty wealthy neighborhoods, and so they see all sorts of comforts of home. I talk about the fact that if you drive, my youngest is in high school, and so when I go to drop her off in the morning or pick her up in the morning, there are Lexuses and Acuras and, really very high-end vehicles of the parents dropping their kids off. And I know that, in other environments, you would be seeing more Fords and Hondas or, or Chevrolets, GM cars, as opposed to what you see in my neighborhood. And that can be very, very different. And it's important, I think it's important that kind of kids know that money doesn't just show up. There is work that's involved in getting the money. And it's important that kids understand the value of money. So how did your parents, other than the allowances, teach you the value of money?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's several things that I could say in response to that. But I think aside from, first of all, having an open conversation, I feel like the mindset about money right now, especially amongst African Americans, it's generational. It was generational of, how much money you have and how much money you don't have, especially if there's no full understanding of how to fully manage it.
Right.
So one is the conversation of managing it. Two is the conversation of the fact that there's such thing as investments. And just understanding that money makes the world go around, but it does not go on trees, and it should not fully define your happiness, and that it should not be the only thing that you live for, because there's so many people who live and die just to make money, just to provide, food and shelter and education. But then I think there's also a different narrative, because my parents, of course, I stopped before having me also. They have entrepreneurial experiences and creative experiences. So they have the experiences of understanding that what you put in, you literally get out, because when you put so much money into your own businesses and your own ideas, you get out whatever investments you make in that aspect. So I think it's really generational. And then I think I wanted to jump around to talk about the aspect of death. When it comes to death, of course, not many people, especially now. Now many people understand, thanks to social media, of the importance of life insurance. But there has been the experience of, life still goes on even after someone passes away. But the question is, how much debt are they going to include from the person who has passed away, because of that, lack of conversation of money or lack of preparation. Especially if I give the example of, my ex-husband and I have experienced death within his family. And there were moments where he would have to come out of his savings just to cover, if not the medical expenses that will come before death, and the expenses that come just to pay for the death of burying the body and the cultural rituals and things of that sort. So then I think it's all just a matter of conversation that has not been had generationally, that causes, it's just mindset. Because even, I'll go backwards a little bit too, because actually I was also blessed in high school to be able to get a fully paid off used car. Again, this is because of the investment, because of the money conversation my mom did have, and because my mom did actually had me research cars, this car that I wanted. So sure, my own peers in high school thought I was some kind of rich kid because, I had what looked like a new car when it was really just a very well taken care of 2-year-old used car. It already had, I think, 17,000 miles or something on it. So just having that conversation, because without the conversation, it's so easy for assumptions to be made. So it's sure it's that conversation to be had of, okay, if any children ask why are they driving a nicer car than we are, it's just a matter of saying, okay, well, some families have to prioritize their expenses. Some families prefer or can only afford a vehicle that would get you from point X to point Z. Others can afford to give you the big house, the great education, delicious food, healthy food, and your nice, comfortable, luxurious car. So it's all about having that initial conversation, not being afraid of having it.
So I love that because I mean, this podcast is really about having the conversations. And I love the fact that you also talked about, about insurance. It's kind of a funny topic, but for in our community, and I say our as in African American community, you'll find a number of people who don't want to even have a insurance conversation because they feel like it means that they're going to die. And I mean, I hate to tell them, the real truth, that you're going to die. The question is, are you going to die with life insurance, or are you going to just die and leave behind the expense of your final expenses without life insurance? I mean, life insurance is just an easy, quick way for you to take care of those things. And I'm often baffled when I talk to families who haven't invested in it or haven't looked at it or are afraid to even talk about it, because I mean, the reality is you're going to die whether or not you've planned for it or not. And I always, I'm a planner. So it's always, in my mindset, it's always a good thing to have the insurance than to not. I mean, in this era right now that we're currently in, where we're sheltering in place and people are getting this new virus that is taking them out, or at least getting them pretty sick. This is the ideal time to be looking at an investment like insurance.
Yeah, I agree. I really think it truly is an investment. And I'll admit, I mean, I'm a millennial. So at first I was one of those, I'm like, why insurance? Why insurance of any kind? But of course it took me seeing deaths in my own family, my ex-spouse's family, even my friends, and see the aftermath of how it affects the family, especially when there was no plan in place. So of course, it truly is, that's all it is. Even though it seems like you're just shelling money out every month, not just life insurance, health insurance, car insurance, rental insurance. It just seems like you're just shelling money out for nothing, because sometimes you are protected in a way of nothing happening for a good 5 years, and then boom, car accidents happen. Then it's like, oh, okay, now you understand the purpose of insurance. Or you have a health scare, like, oh, okay, now you understand the purpose of health insurance. So I mean, it's just a matter of just understanding that it truly is an investment and not a waste of money.
So you've had some really influential people in your life that affected your money conversations. There was your parents as you were growing up. Then there's the financial advisors that you got at 18. Are there any other books or information that have kind of shaped you financially and helped you make better decisions to support yourself? You also talked about your tax advisor giving you, helping you understand the importance of taxes in this day and age, and the fact that, a lot of this stuff is stuff that you've kind of learned, if you will, on the job, as opposed to learning it in school. Is there anything else that kind of influenced or helped shape those decisions for you, or your mindset around these things as you've kind of grown up into the person that you are now?
Well, I think I'll add a resource. There was a online course that I took. It's called 1K. The website is 1K1day.com, but the course itself is called 1K1day.com. Now, this is a course I took up once I, obviously way past school. Once I was married, I was really ready to pivot, to make a shift. I was like, something's not working in my own business, and I want to know what to do about it. And so the course instructor is Nicole Walters, and she, ironically, is of Ghanaian descent, so that's why I connected with her. I'm like, oh, I've been to Ghana, yeah. But she worked in corporate for a long time before listening to that inner voice in her head that said, it's time to start your own business. It's time to quit. It's time to start your business. So she shares her story of her own father being a taxi driver all of her life in Washington, D.C. So she observed how her own father would drive around these rich politicians who were always in suits while dad goes home to barely make ends meet for her and her siblings. And so I related to that story of, my own dad was a taxi driver and was a CDL truck driver all my life. But also in that course, not only did she kind of teach us how to really set up a system for our own businesses to be, I would say, recession-proof, but also there's an extension of the course. There's like an alumni club that she has, and she literally will allow some of her other students who have succeeded from her course to be teachers to the upcoming students that are, new members. And so one of those courses in there was actually from a financial advisor. She had financial experience, and so she literally was teaching money mindset courses, and which I felt were important. I mean, not just how to invest, not just how to establish a business as an LLC or corporation, whichever entity you need, but also just understanding where your understanding of money came from. And so I appreciated that course because not only did it just teach us to have the structure to fulfill a side hustle, which I feel everyone needs to have, not just depend on that job that could one day let you go at any point, but also have that side hustle to the point where you're actually doing something that fulfills you and that can also feed your family. So I appreciated courses like that. Even though it was maybe not only 5 years ago, I feel like that helped me a lot. But actually growing up, it was really hard because before that course, I didn't even understand that. Okay, sure, even though there was a transparent conversation about money, even though I knew that money didn't grow on trees, it was still just a certain mind shift that I had to make within myself because even though I was blessed beyond measure, there's so many people who were not, blessed to have certain situations that I had. And so just a matter of having that inner battle of I would be around people who either it looked like they had more than me, or maybe just because they had more of an understanding of money than me, or other financial resources. And so sometimes you can tend to compare, but it's just really narrowed down to just having that understanding of what they had to go through to really get to that place in life where they are financially comfortable and financially responsible.
Perfect. So we're coming up to the end of our time today. So I just really wanted to give you the opportunity to tell people about who you are, what you're up to, and how you might be able to help them.
Sure. So you can find me on my website at zaakirahnayar.com. And on there, I also have my links to my podcast, the Living Legacy Podcast, which is basically women of purpose sharing stories of resilience, of how they overcame adversity with resilience. And I also have my book, my memoir, Seeing Life Through a Different Lens. Even though I call it a survivor's memoir on overcoming adversity with resilience, the reviews that I've gotten so far are it's more like a guide of how to be more grateful, of how to just really shift your mindset on life. And so you can purchase my book. It's also on Amazon as a paperback, Kindle, and audiobook. And on my website also is where you can find some free resources. So I'm all about affiliates. So I love to tell others about websites that have helped me with just saving money. Because I definitely had to learn more about saving money, especially the less money that's coming in, because of course life happens. So I love sharing about affiliates that help me to save money and just kind of utilize these resources. So lots of free resources to help you with where you are. Even if you have an idea for your side business, but you just need to get the branding aspect together. That's what I focus on. I'm all things creative. And then, yeah, of course, you can follow me on social media at Illuminous1, which is the meaning of my middle name, Nayar, it's Illuminous. And on there, you just find motivational, inspirational quotes and resources.
All right. So, listeners, as you know, what I will do is when I have the show notes up, I will include links to her various different social media so that you can find her. I think she's had some really great information to share with you as she's kind of navigated through her life up to this point. She is a very unusual millennial, and it's been my delight to have her on today. So Zaakirah, is there anything that you would want to, any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us today?
I think the only thing I want to end with and also reiterate is to just take the time to understand the root of your understanding of money, because that will shift everything. Will shift your understanding of money in the future, especially even if you don't have kids yet and you want to get there, even if you want to buy a house and you're not quite there yet, or you do want your dream car. Just kind of understand your understanding of money first, and then take the time. There's plenty of resources online as well to just kind of understand how you can manage money differently and have that conversation with your closest peers and family.
All right. Well, it's been my pleasure, as I said, to have you on here. She's talking my language. I love the juxtaposition of money and mindset, because I believe that once you shift your money mindset, then your money also shifts along with it. And until you unpack that for yourself, it can be very, very challenging. Even though you know what to do, you find yourself not doing it, has been my experience. So we've got a new course that's going to be opening up again, which is Financial Freedom Fundamentals. We'll be opening that up again in May 2020. So for our listeners who are interested in how I deal with money and mindset, as well as the key tools that you need in order to create financial freedom, you may want to be on the lookout for that. So that will be coming up. Zaakirah, it's been my pleasure to have you on here. Thank you so much for taking the time and finding the time to share with our audience today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. See you later.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Her Money Story Podcast. Want more from Felicia Gopaul? Then subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss a minute. While you're there, feel free to rate and leave a review. We really appreciate it. And if you're interested in going deeper, visit FeliciaGopaul.com. Thank you again, and we'll catch you in our next episode.